recording and it will appear. Okay. Hello, good evening, and welcome to episode number 10 of the intellectual forum, The Happiness Club. And since happiness, as you know, we measure it by many factors. Number one, well-being, and number two, life satisfaction. So today I have the pleasure to have with me the health and fitness guru, Omar Al-Duri. Omar is a professional coach and trainer of various teams in football across Africa and in the United Arab Emirates. He's also an award winning in the sector of health and fitness. And above all, he's the author of the international book, the newly launched one, Reset. And we are going to talk about the 5 dominoes that will change your life. Hello, Omar, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great, it's my pleasure. And for the audience, I would like to advise them to have a notepad beside them and a pen, because I believe there will be lots of information to write down. Omar, you covered a variety of topics in your book that would assist the audience with tools that promote a habitual, sustainable lifestyle. Can we jumpstart and ask you, what do you mean by reset and by dominoes effect?
Reset is actually something that came about when assessing normally when I speak to clients or I speak to a lot of people about their own goals. They normally were scared of change, but not many people knew they were capable of resetting, depending on several factors that I kind of covered over the last 18 years of kind of just studying and reviewing and understanding, how to sustain certain goals. And that's what it came down to. Now, from the health factor, it was something that myself, I'd put myself through, whether it was the nutritional side of things, so how I used to fuel my body, which was one of the dominoes, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. Then it was also about training the body. And then that was another thing. When we were younger, we always used to get away with a lot of things because we were thinking that we could just last forever. Then it became also about fueling the mind, which was so important as you get more mature and you have more experience, that you understand what a pivotal role the mind plays in resetting your own lifestyle. The fourth one was environment, and that was resetting your environment, because a lot of the times I personally went through, I said I needed to get out. I needed a holiday. I needed a break. When in truth, I was in charge of my own environment, and that was resetting my environment. The fifth part was recovery, which we often neglect quite a lot. And a lot of people think we can just keep going. But what happens is effectively you get burnt out. So out of the 5 dominoes, those were 5 subjects that I chose. And the reason why I selected the domino system was because sometimes we found ourselves that we were very good at 4 out of the 5 things, but one thing would affect the chain reaction. And I happened to go through that myself, because whether it was training, I was doing really well, but my food wasn't quite that great, or whether it was all 4 great things and then my recovery wasn't good, which affected me in the long run. And then that caused injury or caused my mind not to be in the right space. So I used the domino system to be able to kind of simplify all the contradicting opinions we have, a lot of the research we have, a lot of the new nutritional diets and all these kind of things. I managed to be able to simplify the book so that people could get an idea on how to reset themselves.
Yes, Omar, I forgot to mention that Omar is the host of the halftime show at Pulse 95 Radio. So today I'm actually hosting the host. And since the whole world, we are now resetting our economy, we are resetting our lifestyle, we are resetting our work. So we are ready and we are set to a reset mode. So we will learn more from Omar. So Omar, you talked already about the 5 dominoes and how they can affect each other. So my next question will be, what is, in your opinion, what is emotional eating? Because some people, they just eat and they're not aware what are they eating, why are they eating. They're not hungry. There's nothing but just maybe an emotional state of mind that led them to eat and eat and eat more and more.
That's a very good question. So with emotional eating, normally the thing that we find ourselves doing, especially having experienced, more time at home, is being more friendly with our fridges and being more friendly with the fact we have access to them. And emotional eating doesn't just happen all of a sudden. It kind of builds up over a time period, especially as youngsters. For in our youth, sometimes our parents, treat us to a treat, and that becomes all of a sudden habitual in the way that we eat. But then again, also when we grow up, sometimes we feel uh, due to the stress or the things that we're having to manage, that it causes us to emotional eat or maybe overeat, because we replace fueling the body with just thinking that we need that food, and we have it present, and we haven't planned or pre-planned what we're going to do. And it happens to all of us. It happens to me, it happens to my wife, happens to a lot of people, where
Yeah.
we experience emotional eating because of the current pandemic, for example, that's happening now. People losing their jobs, people having different challenges, facing so many different things. The emotional part is something we can't afford to neglect, because in the long run, it really, really does take its toll. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves almost on a slope where we're like, how do I get back to where I was? And that comes through the emotional side of health and fitness.
Yeah. Knowledge about nutrition is crucial. It can actually change lives and even prevent chronic diseases. What is your opinion on different diets that we know today, like the keto diet, like the vegan diet, like the juicing, and maybe what else, counting macros, or the method of the intermittent fasting?
I think one size doesn't fit all. I think you have to firstly give yourself enough time to experience whatever works best for you. I know it's a cliche, and a lot of people say that, but which one? Everyone wants that kind of quick, instant fix. But the point is, there's no instant fix in that. Our bodies react differently. A female's body to a male's body, the way that the hormones are managed. Some females go through labor and go through, birth, and that is another thing which comes down to it. So often when studying it, you can't compare every single person. But one thing I do say is to be able to give yourself enough time to see what works best for you. Now, when it comes down to the latest trends, when it comes down to the keto and it comes down to being vegan and all sorts of stuff, my thing is that we put our body through so much, for our lifetime. To expect change in 2 to 3 weeks is kind of unrealistic. And we have to also have in our goals, we have to have realistic goals to be able to set ourselves to see whether that works for us. When people stop eating gluten or stop eating carbs, it takes a while to kind of flush that out of your system. And we're talking about habits here. And we're talking about, being able to sustain it for longer than just a month. Because we get also in our society now, we get quite bored very, very quickly. And if we don't see things, we get quite frustrated. That's perfectly fine. But also realize how long it's taken us to get to the stage where we want to have a positive change. We want to reset emotionally. We want to reset physically. We want to be able to fuel our body. All these things are so key, but timing is so important. And giving yourself enough time to be able to do that gives you a fair indication if that route of the nutritional side of things suits you best. So I spoke to a client about this yesterday. Actually, she was talking to me and she said she was doing a meal plan. She was happy. And now she shifted over to keto. And I'm never one to say, don't do this. I said, okay, well, let's understand it. Where are you getting your sources from? Where are you studying? Where's the research papers from? Is it from a trusted source, or is it from a website that might be just telling you what you need to subscribe to? See, there's so many things that we get fed, and it confuses people. So nutrition is so important, not just for fueling the body, but fueling the brain. And it's also something that we need to give ourselves enough time to be able to actually see if it works for us.
To see the results. Food, I believe that food is most important to balance energy and to help us being productive at work. So what is the balance technique of nutrition? I mean, maybe it is something not restrictive, sustainable, and we can do in the long run. So what do you advise here?
Good question. I advise for us to be able to change the idea of dieting, because that's the first thing that people say. I need to get on a diet. When you say I need to get on a diet, it has a connotation that it's not going to be long term. It's going to be something that's going to be very quick, short, and let's see how it goes. So the moment we start to switch the way we think, the way we speak, and also if we've got a family, the way they're going to be eating and the way they're going to be speaking about it, when we start to prevent people from having something, most of the time they want to do it. And like children, we always face that, where we say, when you say don't touch that or don't have that, most reliable sources are going to be like, no, I want to do that now. I want to be able to actually have something that my parents said not to. So it's more about the educational side. It's more about understanding what you're putting in your body, what's affecting your gut health. 80% of our immune system is in our gut. So already, when we understand what's going in our gut, we're able to be a lot more productive. We're able to feel better, not lethargic, not tired. And also, in the long run, it helps so much when you understand the chemicals that are being put in the food to be able to cause that reaction that sometimes when we get to about 2 p.m. and we feel tired, there's a reason why. Fueling is so key. And you said it like best when you said sustainable. So that's the opposite to restrictive. And when you're thinking of something restrictive, you're thinking, I'm going to get back to that soon. But when you think of sustainable, it's something, well, okay, I felt like a bit of rice or a bit of pasta or a bit of bread. That's fine. But if you say, I can't have bread, most likely you're going to want bread. So that's kind of like the way we see it. But
the opposite happened.
Yeah, promoting that long term is understanding that very well.
I just would like to tell the audience in Instagram that if they have any question, they can write it down. I will make sure to have a time at the end with Omar to answer all your questions. So now, Omar, I would like to know, you defined actually three body types. That is the endomorph, the mesomorph, the ectomorph. And each body type has its own diet, or maybe its own factors. Can you explain more these three types of body, and how can we tackle each type with the food, with the exercise?
Absolutely. So with the three different body types, if you turn it around to the screen, the viewers can see it. So if we highlight the first one, you think of ectomorph or endomorph or mesomorph. They're all different types of body types.
The book or what?
Yeah, in the book, you've got the three body types like a diagram, because a lot of people, as many times as I would say which one is which, they're not sure which one is theirs. They have to kind of have a visual.
Here it is.
Right. Yeah. There you go. So when you see the different body types, you identify straight away with which one is yours. So if I took, let's say, an endomorph, and I thought, all right, I think I'm an endomorph. The way we burn calories, the way we use our energy, the way we do certain things shows a certain shape, whether you're male or female. For me, it's very easy to put on weight, very easy to put on weight. And so if I'm not sustaining that energy throughout my day, I can put on weight within a day or two, and it could be very obvious on the eye. So for example, I went into work the other day at the radio, and my boss said to me, have you put on weight? and I said to him, I said to him, I don't know. I've been training. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. So it's very easy for my body type, to put on the weight. When you look at the book and you look at the diagram, you straight away can identify and say, you know what, actually, I think I'm that type of body type. Now, I break that down even more in the book to help you realize that, some people, it's harder for them to put muscle on, be male or female. Some females, for example, put on muscle very quickly. So now you straight away start to compare what you do to what the book shows, and then it tells you that this is kind of the route you need to go on when it comes down to the way you eat, the way you recover, and the way you train.
Great. What is the importance of muscle and maintaining muscles? Because some diets, if we go on vegan, then we risk losing muscles.
You know what?
I'll for a long time that I knew that for a long time. So muscles are crucial to our health as well.
Yes, they are crucial to health, but also I would like to challenge the opinion of being vegan means, you probably lose muscle, because there are a lot of proteins in plant-based foods. And nowadays, recently there was a documentary called The Game Changer, which was on Netflix, and some people were for it, some people weren't. Some people called it propaganda. Some people were like, no, it's perfect. And the idea is explaining that some of the foods we have are equivalent to, let's say, the meat eater. So 100 grams of broccoli, 100 grams of steak. Are we thinking that the steak is obviously more protein, which helps with, maintaining muscle? Normally, that's what we're taught. But when you actually look at it, you're getting the amount of density in the food from the vegetables as you would from the meat. So when it comes down to muscle maintenance, the reason why it's important, be it female or male, is because it helps you function better. And a lot of the stereotypes is if you have muscle, you're bulky, but that's not necessarily it. And that's why a lot of females are skeptical of using weight training. They think, no, I'm going to get bigger. That's not the case at all. You can get leaner. And by getting leaner means you're reducing your body fat and maintaining your muscle or increasing your muscle mass. And that helps you function better, which also allows you to be stronger rather than bigger, allows you to be fitter rather than skinnier. There's so many different terms we get thrown out there, and we label ourselves as skinny, tall, long, strong, fit. But the truth and reality is when we do start to understand the way our body functions mechanically, we're then able to weight train. We're then able to do our cardio. We're able to find things that actually help you find your fit for your lifestyle.
Yeah. Omar, what is probiotic and what is the importance of it to the gut health? Because these days we always hear the word probiotics and we don't really understand it and its importance to the gut health.
Yes. So with probiotics and cleaning the gut, because of the way things are now produced in the shops and also shelf life being quite a long time, there's often chemicals that are put into the food to be able to last longer. And those chemicals can actually hinder you when it comes down to, your long term, because they store in your gut. When they do so, it affects your microbiome and it affects the way your gut health is, because it's very hard to flush that out if you're not obviously drinking a lot of water or having the right nutrients or right nutrition to cleanse your gut. And that's why things like intermittent fasting is actually very, very good for you, because it allows you to kind of go through different parts of the day without feeling hungry once the appetite gets used to it. And we just passed Ramadan recently, and even with that, when it came down to the fasting without any water, obviously, it was again a nice way to cycle. The difference is the moment we are allowed to eat al-Maghrib, it's then the case where people fuel because they think they can eat more, but the appetite's quite shrunk. So the probiotics is so important, not necessarily just as a supplement, but through foods, through whole foods, through foods that can actually help you cleanse. So you've got things like yogurt, and you've got things like kimchi and kombucha and fermented foods that can actually help cleanse your stomach, rather than, thinking that we need certain types of food to clean the stomach. The obvious things is to go through the probiotic side, which helps kind of really, really like clean your gut.
Yes. Talking about nutrition and food, I would like also to mention to the audience the superfoods. It's already there. You mentioned in your book foods like avocado, blueberries, kiwi, grapefruit, beets, broccoli, kale, garlic, chia, cinnamon, flaxseed, and we have a long list over here.
Yeah.
But what was new really to me is that not the superfood, because I know the superfoods, but you mentioned that there are foods that are good for the guts, but there are also foods that could cause fatigue and draw energy. What are they and how they function in our body? These kind of food that can we eat so we feel fatigued and low in energy.
So a lot of the time when it comes down to, what we call the foods that look very appealing on the eye but actually quite hinder our system is the fried foods and the obvious foods that by the time it gets to your plate, it's been cooked in all sorts of things and to appear a certain way, but when it actually goes through your system, it makes you feel quite lethargic and quite tired. And I know that some people are going to be like, we love those foods. But the question is, how does it make you feel? And what reaction does it get out of you? When you start to really build up a habit or habitual lifestyle, your body starts to get used to how to eat and how to fuel. With the, let's say, fried foods, if I could take anything, let's say fried potatoes compared to normal potatoes. When you put all that oil in there and you've actually put a lot of salt in there, now the sodium plays a factor. Now all these things, as soon as you're done, firstly, it makes you want to have more of it. And then as soon as you're done, you actually feel like quite tired and like you don't want to go back to work. If, let's say, you were working and you had a lunch break and you've had those foods, it's kind of hard to pick yourself up for the next couple of hours to get through the working day, because those foods have an impact on your brain as well as your body. And that in the long term is very hard to battle if you haven't had something that's able to clean you out, or even something that's able to satiate you nutrition wise. So I read something about 10 years ago and it stuck in my head. It said you can have 10,000 calories and still be starved of nutrition. Now, 10,000 calories is a lot for one person. And that also tells you that you can still be starved from nutrition, even though you have that amount of calories, because you're eating the wrong foods. So the superfoods, I think we all know. The foods that hinder our performance and our daily routine are the ones that people would probably look at and think, yeah, I knew that, but I didn't think it would be that bad. When you add all of them together, that's when it affects you. Because someone I interviewed last year, his name is Jim Quick. He's the brain coach, very interesting guy. And he said something to me that stood out. He said, we always know what to do, but we don't always do what we know. And when he said that, I thought, wow, yeah, that makes so much sense. Because sometimes you give someone, they'll ask you a question and you'll tell them and they'll say, yeah, I knew that. And then you ask them, but do you do it? And they go, well, not really, a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of like what comes into it. So it is very important to be able to understand what happens when we put these foods in our body.
Yes, and this lead me to the next question. We talked about the health, the physical health. How about the mental health and the mental training? And you talked about just drawing a map, a mental map to reach your goals. And you said also that 90% of the performance, even in the play area, I mean, in the 90% of the performance is mental. Is this true?
Yes.
To which extent it's true? Yeah.
It's very true, because I've been fortunate enough to work with some of the best athletes in the world, and I realize more and more that even if you have the talent, if you don't have the mental capacity and the hard work to be able to persevere through the tough times, the talent doesn't show. And more than ever, when I was fortunate enough to work in Africa, I worked with some incredible athletes, and we were getting ready for the African Nations Cup. And some of these boys were so talented, but you needed to get their mind right. And if you got their mind right, they're most likely to perform, because physically they are gladiators, they're warriors, they're people that you look at and you think, wow, like this human being in front of me looks like a gladiator, something out of a movie. But then all of a sudden, if his mindset wasn't right, then he wasn't able to execute the plan. So working with people mentally and being able to understand and listen, more importantly, to what it is that's stopping them, what is that stopgap that's not allowing them to progress, is very, very key. And also something related to your book as well is happiness, and the ability to be able to be confident and be happy and be able to enjoy the process is such a key thing. Because normally when you're not happy, it's stopping you from taking that step, which makes you realize where you're at and how close you are rather than how far you are. And this is why the mental side and mental health, especially, not just for men, but for females as well, is so important to get that right, because it stops you a lot of the time from getting what you need and what's so close to you, which is touching distance. But we don't know that because our mind is telling us exactly what it doesn't have rather than what it does. So the mindset and the mental health is so important. I think nowadays what's nice is on this part of the world, because I grew up in London, so for us it was a bit more open in that sense that you could talk about it. But on this part of the world, in this region, it hasn't always been easy to be able to speak out about it. And even for myself, having gone through quite a bit of my own experiences, it taught me to be able to speak about it, because someone else might be thinking what I'm thinking, but not, but worried to say something because they were taught from their parents, man up, sort it out yourself. Don't talk about it. You'll be fine. Get over it. You know, this kind of stigma, this mentality has stopped us from being able to express our emotions, which comes down to the five dominoes we were speaking about. The mental side is so important, and nowadays we're having more forums, more seminars discussing mental health, which is so important because we have younger versions of us who are not able to express themselves because they've been taught not to. And that is so key. And it's our duty to be able to create that platform for people to be able to speak about it, and that way that will help them with what they're going through.
Yes, you know, Omar, as you are talking about the mental health, it came into my mind also that recently, study after study, they showed and pointed out that happy people are the most successful people. So it is really crucial to be mentally healthy and sane, and definitely to try as much as we can to be happier person and happier version of ourselves.
Yes.
Regarding in your opinion, what is the optimum training time for anybody? If you are starting your zeroing, you are starting from zero. What is the optimum and the best training timing that you can reach, or maybe gradually reach there?
So I can speak from experience, and I can tell you that from my experience, I don't believe, like, for example, let's say, Huda, you might be more productive in the morning, so you might be better off training in the morning, and then when it gets to the end of the day, you're able to relax better, and that will take the pressure and the ease off your mind. I, for example, I'm not a morning person, so so me waking up early to be able to train is not something I want to do necessarily, and that's why my mind is already telling me, Amar, that's not you. That might work for her, but it doesn't work for you. In Ramadan, this year I challenged myself to something that I've never done before. In all the years I've fasted and trained, a lot of people ask that question: what is the best time to train in Ramadan? Is it before iftar? Is it after iftar? And my thing was, because I had work from 6 to 7 just before Maghrib, I couldn't train myself. So now I had to get my mind right to train at a time that I would be able to be productive and not feel tired. Now, when you're training and you're fasting, you got to be very careful. So I actually switched up my training and started training 3 to 4 a.m. just before Fajr, because I used to stay up until prayer time anyway. I used to train 3 to 4 because I could hydrate. So now I've taken away the element of, all right, well, it's Ramadan and you're fasting and you got to be careful. Your energy levels are not great. But what I did is I fine-tuned myself to be able to have water available and say to myself, some people are training while they're fasting. You have no excuse now. If you need the rest, you can rest. You can still work and get everything done. But when it comes down to your training, no one is to disturb you. No one's going to be awake at 3 to 4 anyway to be able to call you. And so you have your own time, your own element. So that was my experience personally. And I only did that this year for the first time because of the circumstances, because of quarantine, because of COVID, because of Ramadan, all the things that we had to kind of factor. That worked for me. Now, when it comes down to training on a regular basis, I'm not going to train at 3 a.m. because I don't have to put myself in that situation. But I will have a time where I block it out for me. And at that point, my phone isn't with me, my computer isn't with me, no one can get hold of me. But that's also quite good for my own mental state, to give myself that time where I can dedicate some time to myself physically and mentally. So I don't think there's one time for everyone, but I do encourage people to try out different things. If it's more from a lifestyle perspective, you might want to go for a walk when there's sunrise or sunset. You might want to go for a run when there's sun. If you're not a runner, you might want to cycle. If you're not into cycling, you might want to swim. There's so many options that just help you have your me time. And in doing that and having your me time, you're then able to, dedicate some time to yourself, and that would be what suits you best.
Yes. So, so when it comes to training time, there is no rules. everything is possible regarding to the personalized personal state.
Yes.
You mentioned two kind of training: the HIIT, which is the high intensity interval training,
Interval
and
training. Yep.
this, which is the low intensity steady state. Can you explain
Yes.
more these two types of training?
Absolutely. So with the HIIT training and the interval training, normally the high intensity work is done over short durations of time, but very intense. And it gives you some time to recover. This also helps with the endurance. It also helps with your stamina. It helps with you trying to get fit. With the slow, steady state, that point isn't wrong. Normally, bodybuilders are doing that, or people trying to compete where they have to lose a certain amount of weight, but they have to do it for longer periods, and that is more for that kind of range. So there is, in both styles, there's two different styles of training. To make it even more simpler, I would say, here's a formula for everyone that's got a pen and paper that listened to Huda earlier. 220 minus your age is your maximum heart rate. Okay. If you're looking to lose weight, then I would say on losing weight, you would then stick between 60 to 80% of that to be able to burn body fat. And I think most of the time, the most common thing I hear is, oh, Omar, how do I lose weight? How do I lose fat? I need to lose weight. Weight and fat are two different things. When you start to become specific, that overall number, that's why I hate scales. I hate scales because unless it tells you, it breaks down how much water is in your body, how much muscle mass in your body, how much percentage of body fat is in your body, then I don't really want to see an overall number. That the overall number does not mean anything to me. You could still lose 5 kilos of muscle and gain 5 kilos of fat and still be the same number. And you wouldn't really know it if you're just looking at the overall number. And when you break that down, you're able to understand exactly how well you've progressed, and mentally as well. A lot of people train really hard and eat really well, and then they're discouraged because the number hasn't changed on the scale. Firstly, how often are you checking? And secondly, does that number really reflect all the work you've done if you're just looking at the overall number and not the percentage of body fat if you were looking to lose weight and if you're looking to maintain muscle? So there's a bit of a formula for you when it comes down to just breaking it down. I don't think there's anything wrong with either. Personally, for me, I've tried so many different styles of training, and I always like to challenge my body to see what it can do, but I also am very aware of what I'm capable of. I have to be very realistic. I can't think that, I'm training like I was when I was playing football at a high level. I can't think like that. I have to think of right now, you're in a different environment, you're in a different state physically. Your body has taken quite a bit of, not damage, but quite a bit of wear and tear, as we call it. And it's experienced injuries, experienced so many things. You have to train smart, not hard. And that's why one of the chapters is called that,
Yeah.
because sometimes our ego gets in the way and we're not able to kind of, you know, experience things at a more, let's say, rational rate, because we're thinking that we need to fly all the time and do things that are high intensity. Not really. You got to just pace yourself and eventually the results will come.
Yes. You mentioned many times throughout your book that we need to listen to our bodies. How do we listen to our bodies? For some people, this concept is difficult. Can you elaborate more in
Listen,
this concept?
absolutely, yeah. Listening to our bodies is being able to give ourselves enough time to to generate that response. So be it if it's nutrition wise, if you are going to go on a nutrition plan, and if you are going to give yourself some time to adapt to a new plan, you've got to give it enough time, and that requires you to see how you react. That's why the listening comes from reacting to the type of foods you're now eating. If you stopped eating a certain type of food, maybe you might not feel as bloated, maybe you might feel stronger, maybe you might feel weaker. There's so many different things. When people, often the case when someone who enjoys eating meats stops eating meat, they automatically think that they don't get the energy from the proteins. But see, if you're getting the proteins from the vegetables and you realize you didn't need the meat, you need enough time to realize exactly what works for your body. So you're listening to the reaction and how you feel more than anything, which gives you that time. So I think time is so important. It's so key to be able to allow yourself to measure it fairly. A lot of the times we kind of do something for a week or two, say that's not working, and we just change. So when you give yourself enough time, you're able to kind of assess and listen to your body and see what works for you best when it comes down to incorporating the superfoods, eliminating the foods that do harm, adding the probiotics, thinking of what type of training you need to do, thinking of the type of recovery you need. You might incorporate meditation, you might incorporate yoga, you might incorporate swimming. When you start to give yourself all these options, they require time to be able to assess whether it works for you or not.
Yes, and as you mentioned, variety gives longevity and sustainability. So maybe that's
Yeah,
the secret. Maybe that's the secret sauce.
absolutely.
Yeah. Regarding the flow concept of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi,
Yes.
what is the flow in exercise? How can we reach a stage of flow? And we know that this is a stage of flow in training and exercising.
Yes. So one of the best coaches in the world, his name is Faraz Zahabi. He spoke about this recently, and he's covered some of the best athletes in the world. The flow state of training is like Huda, me telling you, for example, you can either train 3 times a week, very intense, or you can train 5 times a week, but at a controlled rate, where overall, when we assess the whole month, you're doing the same thing because the volume is the same, right? Because you'll need more time to recover if you're doing high intensity training every single day. So it's not really realistic to sustain that over the month. So you need time to recover. So if I did high intensity training Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and I needed those days to recover, eventually it might take its toll as we get a little bit more older, a bit more mature. It takes its toll. But if I do the flow state training and I program it where everything I wanted to do in those 3 days, I do over 5 days, now all of a sudden that month becomes a lot more lighter on the brain, on the body, because you're still doing the exact same amount, but in a program that is covering a month. Now, when you go into the second month, you can up it slightly, or you can control it where it worked for you the first month, let's go again second month. And normally a lot of fighters, mixed martial artists, men and women who compete at the highest level, they put their bodies through 6 to 8 weeks of a camp, a training camp. And in that 6 to 8 weeks, they are doing a lot of things where the coach assigns a program to the athlete to get through. So when it comes down to the week of the competition, they start to lessen the workload so they're injury free. And so that's what flow state training is. And what I liked about this when I came across it years back is it made a lot of sense to me, especially as I started to get injuries. I had a lot of things that I had experienced because I tried so many different types of training. With the flow state, it made so much sense because I wasn't doing harm to my body. I was able to kind of plan something, program something, and then get through it the whole month. And some days we are not going to feel full of energy. So that's actually works fine for me because I don't have to go 100% that day. I can still go 60 to 80%. I can still manage it as long as when it came down to the last week, I've checked my stats for 3 weeks and I'm saying, right, Amar, on the second week, you slacked a bit. So now you need to do that session in the final week to bring everything back to balance. And balance is the key word here because that's something that sometimes we struggle to maintain. And having that balance in flow state has been very, very effective when it comes down to the physical part of programming.
Yes, yes, definitely. When we reach a flow state, the exercise itself will be more enjoyable.
Yes.
Omar, we talked about resetting our mind, but how about resetting the environment we are in? Is it
Very good question.
something
That's one.
easy? Is it reachable? Is it easy? Is it reachable? And what is the impact on your diet, your physical health, and your fitness?
It's a very good question. Huda, when it comes down to resetting your environment, a lot of the times when I was growing up, I always thought that I had to leave where I was to be able to get a better peace of mind, to be able to, be in a different environment. And a lot of the times I traveled to Thailand, I traveled to Egypt, I traveled to, places all around Europe because I thought that the stress that I was under in the UK or in the UAE was something that I needed to get out. The point of resetting your environment is making the small changes to be able to make yourself happier, to get through things during the day when it came down to work, when it came down to training, when it came down to food. Making the right choices was something that we learned to do eventually, and also filtering out the things that we don't need to do. And that's one of the things with resetting your environment, whether it's meditation in the morning, whether it's prayers, if you're being spiritual, if you close all your devices, your TVs, your computers, your phones, and you give yourself 20 minutes to be able to do some breath work, which is something I personally was fortunate enough to do with a coach, a breathing coach, someone that studied the sciences of breathing. And she taught me how to breathe properly, which then helps you when you're at a fight or flight situation, when you have to react to something or you have to be calm, digest, and then reflect on things. All these things are part of our everyday life. So resetting your environment helps you be more productive, but also helps you manage your relationships, your work, your social circle, things that we sometimes might react to depending on what someone said or what someone did or something that happened. All these things come down to resetting your environment, being able to digest, reflect, and being able to respond in a manner which is not defensive or aggressive or react to what people say. These are all things we can practice. And if we practice it, all of a sudden we're more calmer and we can solve the problem without overreacting.
Great. Time is running. I have many quotes I would like to read to the audience from your book. The first one
Sure.
is about the concept of the 21 days. We all know that it takes 21 days to create a habit and 92 days to incorporate a lifestyle change. Can you elaborate more on this quickly? And then there is also another quote from Bill Phillips. I like it very much because if we measure our progress, not our perfection, I mean focus on progress and not perfection. Can you elaborate more on these two quotes to
Sure.
form a
Yes.
healthy training lifestyle and a change in our lifestyle?
Yes. So when it came down to the habitual side of things and being able to create positive habits, again, it came down to timing, and it came down to doing things where we had to be honest with ourselves. We had to be accountable. We had to actually think. There's no point hiding it from everyone else. If you're true to yourself and you actually say, have I stuck to the goal settings that I set, whether it was my food? Have I cheated a little bit? Have I had a cheat meal here and there? Yeah, maybe so, but does it really hinder my performance? How am I going to sustain something if I'm not doing things properly? But then again, if I've been cheating for the last 3 months, how do I earn a cheat meal now? So there's so many different factors in creating a habit, which it came down to not just the nutrition, but also the training, also giving yourself a chance and not being too hard on yourself, which is something a lot of us do, including myself. When you set yourself goals and you're not reaching them, you get frustrated and it affects, your momentum in getting into the goal setting. So when it came down to 21 days, that was just something that we read about a lot. And
Yeah.
it could be the simplest things like eliminating sugar from your nutrition and seeing how you feel after 21 days. Because normally within 3 days, you start to feel a little bit more different. You get withdrawals, you get symptoms that says, I don't feel right. I need some sort of sugar. But when you get through 21 days of it, you realize actually that tastes a bit different 21 days later. I don't think I can stomach that. So that was just a small example in terms of lifestyle. In terms of perfection and progression, see, when it comes down to perfection, what is being perfect? What is you staying in your lane? How are you able to, let's say, formulate what perfection is? But progress is always something that you look at and see how you measure up compared to what you did before. Let's say we're taking training in this aspect when it came down to progress. If you've been able to run longer, you've been able to swim more, you've been able to cycle more, that for you tells you that I did 5 kilometers in 20 minutes today. And then in 2 weeks, I did 5 kilometers in 10 minutes. That's progress. But if you think, if you think I have to do 5 kilometers in 10 minutes now, you're already trying to be, yes, you see, so that's kind of the idea of the two, and just being able to give yourself enough time to do so helps with your progress and not expect perfection straight away, especially if you haven't been doing that for a long time.
Great. You talked about fitness and health as a holistic approach. And I like that at the end, you mentioned that the best way to receive something you like is to give it. first.
Yes.
And you talked also about gratitude, which is a very positive emotion. What can you tell us today about gratitude, and what does it have to do with your happiness state and with fitness in general?
A lot of the time, when I'm speaking to clients, when I'm speaking to people, and I'm asking them about how they're doing and what they're doing and how they're doing it, a lot of the time it depends on the old cliche of, you know, a glass half full versus half empty. What we do have versus what we don't have. What we want to achieve versus what we've achieved already. It's very easy to overlook the things that we do have, and it's very easy to think that we don't have something. But when you look across and you realize how grateful you can be when it comes down to, you know, I think it was what's his name, the gentleman, Asian gentleman with colored eyes, who does the podcast. He said something along the lines, that's going to come to me. He said something along the lines that I really wanted new shoes until I realized someone had no feet. And
Yeah, I know that quote, but I don't know who said it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So when I see something like that, um, I believe that we sometimes we overlook what we do have. And you know, I'm someone that has been through so many different emotional states, and I've been in dark places before mentally, which then made me question a lot of things. And but in that point, you don't really know what mind state you're at, what's going through your mind. And gratitude is so important. It's so incredibly important. That's why I put a gratitude journal at the end of the Reset book, so people can realize when you finish reading it, what you can take away from it and how close you are rather than how far you are in your goal setting.
Yes, I received many questions, but I think most of them are have been answered during the episode.
Mhm.
Questions like maybe one question is not yet answered, and that what is your opinion? What is best to be done when you are going through tough times? And I think also in your book you mentioned kind of 11 points how to deal when you are going through tough time. Maybe if you can brief us some of the points, not all of the points, about your opinion when you are really facing hard time or tough times, generally even in your life. What do you do?
Being able to speak to someone, being able to express yourself, being able to be honest with yourself is so important, especially in tough times. Because sometimes when we say something loud or vocally, it does make more sense or show how heavy something is, or even how light something is. For me, in the book, I mentioned, you know, a life-threatening car accident I had, which kind of changed my perspective. And perspective is key in being able to show empathy, which nowadays, again, especially from the mental side of things, the mental health part, is being able to listen to people. Sometimes we have answers before the question is finished. And I believe genuinely that when it comes down to showing that sense of empathy and showing that sense of understanding where this problem is coming from, is it a root problem that started a long time ago that now has caused anxiety and depression and people to feel quite low about themselves? There's so many factors that being able to speak out and understand what the situation is before coming to a conclusion in your mind of how bad it is important. And for me, my support system, my wife, my mom, they play a huge role in my life. So having two people where I'm fortunate enough to be able to tell them how I'm feeling is something that takes a lot of weight off my shoulders. And I encourage other people to do the same.
To have the same. Really, time flew, but I had really many CTA or call to action to take from all what you said. At the end, I would like to ask you, you always relate training, health, fitness to happiness. How does this combination work for you? And how do you maintain happiness into your life to have it consistent and maybe stable kind of happiness? Especially this question, I'm always asked this question these days. And in the post-pandemic era, everybody is looking how to reset and how to find happiness, how to find a healthy lifestyle, and how to be fit again after we all stayed a lot of time at our home. And I believe not everybody succeeded in being fit during these periods.
Yeah, there's a couple of very good questions there.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of what it does is when you're being active or when you're just doing things that make your body feel better, you release hormones, are happy hormones, and in doing so, that causes you to feel a certain way. The moment we stop doing that is the moment we kind of start to get into a different habit and a different style of, feeling, where maybe we won't be as motivated, maybe we'll be as challenged. Also, the pandemic caused a lot of uncertain times, and in uncertainty came challenges because people didn't know when we're going to come back. People didn't know if we were going to come back to the norm. What is the normal? There's so many things that caused question marks, and in causing those question marks, people weren't sure when this is going to end, how it's going to end. Are we going to go back to work? Are we going to have jobs? Are we going to be able to exercise in gyms? These are all things that it caused, through the unprecedented times. So the happiness is so important in the sense that you got to find what makes you happy, and you got to find what is good for you. Sometimes it's good to be selfish and do things that make you happy, and sometimes helping others helps you become happy. So there's so many things that when you do, or you give, or you donate, or you just help someone, be it just by listening, that can make and change someone's day. And in doing so, it's something that I recommend heavily, because I always say, selfishly, sometimes when I help someone out, or if I listen to someone, or if I do something, I don't talk about it, but I feel so much better afterwards. And that comes down to the laws of attraction, how karma plays its role, and how the universe plays its role. When you give and when you do, it does come back, and that's something that we kind of have to find our own happiness, because some people are motivated and happy with other things, and some people enjoy the simple life, the simple things in life. And that's how we relate to, if I miss a couple of days of training, sometimes I just don't feel happy, and it affects my work and it affects my family, because I'm not being myself. They expect a certain energy from me. If I walk into the radio and I'm going in to do my show, the presenter that's just been on before me can tell if I'm happy or not, because my energy is up. Once I'm on air, if I'm not sounding right, a lot of people can tell, and they can tell straight away, like, were you okay? You didn't sound that great. And that is it's not something that it's offensive. It's actually a compliment, because they're feeling what I'm projecting in my voice. And so there's so many factors. I would say find things through exercise, through being with family, through spending it with kids if you have kids, through reading, through meditation, through being spiritual, through enjoying, going out when you're able to go out, going out and having a nice meal with a friend or a family member, playing sports. If you enjoy sports, doing that with a bunch of people, which could be social. These are all things that I think more than anything now, the world is resetting, because they're appreciating and being more grateful to what we had accessible to us all the time. And now we don't. And so that's something that this period has hopefully allowed everyone to reset their mind and appreciate the finer things.
Okay, great. I keep on receiving the question, the secret formula to losing weight, and I think you already answered. It is in discipline, resetting your environment, resetting your mind. It's kind of a holistic approach. So now I believe that the industry of health and fitness will be key industry in post-pandemic, and I really advise all our audience to get the book Reset. Where can we get it, Omar? From where? Here it is.
It's available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes and Noble. It's available on Apple, and anywhere that they can Google it. They can be able to see on different platforms depending on where they are around the world.
Great. It's a really very rich book. It has a lot of information, and we had today a lot of information. Thank you very much for being with me today, and best of luck in the launch of the book. And maybe we can do another episode. So much information, so much question. Thank you very much, and have a great day. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Huda, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you for reaching out. I really appreciate it. And I'm also happy to answer any of the questions, at a later date. Just send them towards me, and I'll be more than happy on my social media platforms to be able to respond back to them.
It's at Omar Al-Duri. Omar Al-Duri.
That's right.
On social media. And I would like to say to the audience that this episode will be recorded and will be posted on my YouTube channel, Huda El-Sobki, one word, and it will be posted on Instagram. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thank you, Omar.
Thank you.
Bye. not yet. Yes.